Pakistan crash, dozens die as a plane comes down over homes. Survivors pulled from the rubble. Is this the end of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement? World leaders criticise China over its proposed national security law for the territory.
There's nothing that's going to save the people in Hong Kong from the harsh fist of the Chinese Communist Party.
Show me the money. Interest groups start lobbying for part of the $60 billion found after the government's JobKeeper bungle. And the UK announces details for mandatory coronavirus quarantine.
This is SBS World News with Michael Tomalaris.
Good evening. It was supposed to be a sign that Pakistan was moving past its coronavirus restrictions and returning in part to normal. A flight with families set to reunite for Eid al-Fitr after travel restrictions were lifted. Instead, the plane crashed into homes, killing at least 97 people. The flight from Lahore to Karachi was just moments from the runway. The pilot had made 2 attempts at landing before sending a mayday call.
Captured on camera the moments before the Airbus plunged into a residential neighbourhood in Karachi. Panic and chaos. Rescue workers looking for survivors among the 99 passengers and crew, as well as injured locals on the ground. This district home to multi-storey apartments, so many in isolation because of COVID-19 and observing the holy month of Ramadan. As families waited outside hospitals for news of their loved ones and bodies were stretchered to the morgue, finally some good news. This man, the head of a major bank, was pulled from the wreckage alive. Another man telling his tale of survival from a hospital bed.
When the plane caught fire, I unfastened my seatbelt and saw light. I came out of the plane. I jumped from nearly 10 feet.
And miraculously, cameras were rolling as this baby was rescued from under the rubble. Prime Minister Imran Khan tweeting he's shocked and saddened, sending his prayers and condolences and ordering an immediate inquiry into the crash at the Pakistan International Airways A320. This tragedy coming just days after Pakistan allowed commercial flights to resume after the country's coronavirus lockdown was eased. The airline maintains the 15-year-old plane was fit to fly.
Its landing gear, engines, entire inspection was carried out, as per routine checks.
But having made 2 attempts at landing, the pilot radioed in with technical problems, reportedly with the landing gear. Air traffic control advised both runways were clear, but the pilot sent a mayday call on his 3rd attempt at landing.
Sir, we have lost engines. Mayday, Pakistan 830.
The Australian High Commission in Islamabad is making inquiries to determine whether any Australians were on board. An aviation tragedy in a city already devastated by a pandemic. Health officials in Pakistan announcing the number of cases of coronavirus have quadrupled during Ramadan. Felicity Davey, SBS World News.
International condemnation is growing against China's plans to crack down on the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. The new national security laws are being described as a death knell for the city's freedoms, with protesters vowing to continue their campaign.
Beijing calls this radicalisation and even terrorism. Pro-democracy protesters describe it as a fundamental right, but soon it's feared it'll be much harder to demonstrate in Hong Kong.
The important thing is for the people of Hong Kong to realise that without protection of national security, many of the things that we enjoy, many of the things that we treasure will be lost.
Hong Kong's leader supporting China's move to impose national security laws, effectively bypassing the region's lawmakers and aimed at quashing anti-government protests. The bill also allowing for Chinese agencies to be set up in Hong Kong.
I think for the longer term stability of Hong Kong, we need to root out all the radicalisation forces.
The move increasingly being seen internationally as an attack on the former British colony's autonomy. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo calling it a death knell for the city's freedoms and possibly for the economic privileges Hong Kong enjoys. Australia, Canada and the UK also deeply concerned, saying in a joint statement, making such a law on Hong Kong's behalf without the direct participation of its people, legislature or judiciary would clearly undermine the principle of one country, two systems, under which Hong Kong is guaranteed a high degree of autonomy.
It's dead man walking because there's nothing that's going to save the people in Hong Kong from the harsh fist of the Chinese Communist Party.
But this pro-democracy activist who appeared via Skype, heavily disguised from Hong Kong, vows the fight will continue.
We will not accept this level of encroachment on our own very freedoms and rights.
As Hong Kong prepares for yet more change. Catalina Flores, SBS World News.
The federal government is under increasing pressure to make changes to the JobKeeper scheme after an accounting bungle underestimated the amount spent on the program by $60 billion. The debate now shifting to how the money saved should be spent, with welfare groups and unions arguing it's time for those who've missed out to be given more support.
JobKeeper has been described as a lifeline handed to businesses in their time of need. But rushing out billions of dollars to employers hasn't been without its challenges for businesses.
I wouldn't say it's a nightmare, but it's not been easy. Having said that, we couldn't have survived without it.
And the government.
The reality is that where we are at the moment, that's $60 billion less that needs to be borrowed.
This $60 billion mistake is a doozy.
That $60 billion, a result of an accounting bungle. Almost 1,000 businesses are said to have made application errors, about half, instead of putting one for the number of employees, putting down 1,500 for the amount of the JobKeeper payment. The mistake slashing the number covered by the program from 6.5 million to 3.5 million, and the cost from 130 billion to 70 billion, and prompting calls to expand the JobKeeper scheme.
The way to fix it is to extend JobKeeper to the millions of workers that have been left behind.
Among the voices wanting in on the subsidy, casuals, temporary visa holders, much of the tertiary education sector and local workers of foreign-owned companies.
And I think it can be fixed, and I think you can look after the rest of us that are still here.
There are still students who are still suffering from the situation. So why not utilise those $60 billion to help them?
The government says it will review the JobKeeper program in June, but with Treasurer Josh Frydenberg facing one of the biggest budget deficits in history, the Treasurer is resisting calls to expand the scheme. For those out of work, calls also to consider permanent increases to welfare payments.
Otherwise, what we will face will be a devastating blow to households who are relying on this payment.
And with businesses struggling with restrictions, that number is expected to grow. Tom Stainer, SBS World News.
Pressure is building on state governments to further ease coronavirus restrictions. Small businesses such as beauty therapists who have been without clients for 2 months, keen to show they can open safely. Victoria once again recorded the most new virus cases today. It also announced another death, bringing the national tally to 102.
Victoria still closed for business as the state recorded the highest number of new virus cases and a death.
The person was a man in his 60s who has died in a Victorian hospital.
The source for 4 of the new cases confirmed, but the other 6 under investigation and don't appear to be linked to current clusters. This possible community transmission is the reason behind the state's slow return to business as usual.
We're taking a cautious and staged approach. We are trying to really balance between not having to close things down again.
Victorian cafes and restaurants will open for the first time on June 1 with a maximum of 20 patrons. That's the same day as New South Wales venues can welcome 50 people. Although authorities are warning that's not an excuse to party.
Young people, whilst they're enjoying these new freedoms as we move forward, also have to realise with these freedoms come big responsibilities.
One of the last groups of small businesses to return to work are beauty salons.
Financially, we're stressed, and I'm sure there's a lot of families like myself that are stressed as well with having no income.
But overall, the uncertainty of not knowing when we can operate again and how we can operate again is really difficult.
Joanne Lim runs 2 eyebrow clinics in Sydney and says they could safely reopen with a few changes, such as hand sanitizer and gloves. And today there was a glimmer of hope.
Premier's made the point that she's being lobbied by about half the population on beauty therapists. I think probably it's 100% of the population would like to see that all done. So it's very much front and centre for us, and we're working on it.
According to state roadmaps, South Australia and the Northern Territory will open salons alongside gyms and cinemas on June 5. Queensland a week later on June 12. A date is not set for Western Australia, but a move to phase 3 restrictions is pencilled in for June 18. Tasmania has already opened salons. No date is set in Victoria or New South Wales. But as others return to work in the pub, frustration is growing for those forced to keep the doors closed. Lucy Murray, SBS World News.
A New South Wales training program to help physiotherapists treat COVID-19 patients in intensive care is now being used around the world. The initiative grew from a $34 million government investment to build a specialised workforce of physiotherapists. The scheme included intensive training in vital ICU care. Complications such as collapsed lungs, lack of oxygen and a build-up of secretions into the lungs are all addressed by the program.
They are skilled up in ICU skills, they are skilled up in their respiratory physiotherapy skills, they are skilled up in their PPE skills. So we have those physiotherapists and we're still training more of them to tackle this crisis.
The program has already been picked up by physiotherapists in the UK and United States. Coming up, essential faith. US President Donald Trump calls for the immediate reopening of churches. Joe Biden in hot water over black voter remarks. Will it affect his race to the White House? And back to the bush, an exclusive look at the program helping bushfire-impacted koalas get back up trees.
Tonight at 7:30, 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown. Then, winner of 10 Academy Awards, this musical places the beloved tale of Romeo and Juliet into the backdrop of cigar-chomping gangland New York in West Side Story.
We definitely live a very, very comfortable life. I just feel so sorry that people get treated like this. I miss feeling safe. I just want to go home.
Filthy Rich and Homeless starts Tuesday 9th of June on SBS and on demand.
Bill Clinton was somebody we could work with.
Clinton was our answer to Reagan.
I ask you to join with us in a reunited States.
I think I have a real story for you now.
I was completely at his mercy. We were both cautious, but not cautious enough.
Mr. President, your testimony is subject to penalty of perjury.
I was scared and I felt really responsible.
The Clinton Affair starts tomorrow 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you and we're here for good.
If you'd like the sound of a brand new washer or dryer in your laundry, spend $600 or more on one at Bingley and get free full service delivery.
You'll like the sound of that.
Free full service delivery right now from Bingley.
Bye. Shut up and take my money.
Unlike most modems, Telstra's smart modem is cleverly backed up by Australia's best 4G network. So if the connection to your house stops, your home Wi-Fi won't, giving you Australia's most reliable home Wi-Fi. To experience better Wi-Fi, visit telstra.com today.
and we are ready to go.
Monday at 7, Nigella Lawson shares her tips on how to create delicious food at home.
And this is how easy it is. Open a jar, a little oil in the pan, 4 tablespoons of capers, a bit of a stir. They cook incredibly fast. Beautiful. Comforting, elegant, fast.
Nigella Express starts Monday at 7 on SBS Food and On Demand.
The heroes
I remember looking at the horses
we take for granted.
and saying sorry.
Vets.
Grief and loss. We have to be a pillar for people. You're just in it for the money. You don't care about animals.
Then on Dateline, China's other big health issue, obesity. From traditional remedies to brutal boot camps, are they winning the battle of the bulge? Insight followed by Dateline, Tuesday from 8:30 on SBS and On Demand.
From next month, anybody arriving in the UK will be quarantined. The government says the new measures are being introduced to avoid a second wave of coronavirus infections. And for now, there are few exceptions. The British government denying Australia's request to be exempt from the scheme.
Soon, almost anyone arriving into the UK will have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. Most people on this flight from Amsterdam into Manchester thought it was a good idea.
We've just come off a KLM flight. It was absolutely jam-packed full of people. And who knows who's got coronavirus.
After some confusion, the government now says only people arriving from the Republic of Ireland will be exempt. Medical workers will too, and people like lorry drivers who transport goods. Fruit pickers won't be able to travel away from the place they work. Anyone who flouts the new rules could face a £1,000 fine. The Home Secretary said it was the right time for this measure.
And as the transmission rate across the United Kingdom falls and the number of travellers arriving in the UK begins to increase, imported cases could begin to pose a larger and increased threat.
But the travel sector, already battered during the pandemic, will be hit even harder. Airlines believe mandatory masks, gloves and temperature checks will be enough to get more flights moving safely again.
Sadly, it's like a lot of Boris Johnson's strategies. It's just make it up as you go along, announce them.
The boss of Ryanair says the quarantine is
bonkers and unimplementable. I mean, the real issue here is the people arriving into the UK, take for example Heathrow and Gatwick, then get on the London Underground or the Gatwick Express to get into London to wherever it is they're supposed to isolate. So the whole purpose of isolation is defeated.
And this travel agent in Surrey currently has no summer bookings.
I think it will be the final nail in the coffin for mine and many other businesses if this continues. I can't realistically see customers necessarily wanting to self-isolate for 2 weeks after they come back.
Bilateral deals with countries with low infection rates, known as air bridges, are possible in the future. But when it takes effect on June the 8th, the quarantine will be a blanket measure. It will be reviewed every 3 weeks.
US President Donald Trump has ordered states to reopen places of worship, putting him at odds with some state governors. The United States has the highest number of coronavirus cases in the world. More than 1.5 million of the world's 5 million confirmed coronavirus cases are there. And that's nearly 5 times as many cases as the next worst affected country, Brazil.
At the White House, the President demanding the immediate reopening of houses of worship, deeming them essential services.
The governors need to do the right thing and allow these very important essential places of faith to open right now for this weekend. If they don't do it, I will override the governors. In America, we need more prayer, not less.
Rhode Island's governor bluntly rejecting it on public health grounds.
Honestly, that would be reckless. It's Friday. They're not ready. So, no, that's not happening in Rhode Island.
The president tussled with governors just last month, claiming...
When somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total. And that's the way it's got to be.
Then he backed down. On this issue, he has the support of religious conservatives.
I think it's very important that the president made this announcement today. And in fact, I think this is what the faithful of America have been waiting for some time.
Chicago remains a viral hotspot. Its mayor opposed.
Look, the president's running for re-election. He's pandering to a base.
New York State now allowing gatherings of up to 10 people for any reason.
As a former altar boy, I get it. I think those religious ceremonies can be very comforting.
President Trump would not take questions on what authority he has to insist that places of worship open. One of his top coronavirus advisors counselling moderation.
Maybe they can't go this week if there's high number of COVID cases. Maybe they wait another week. But there is a way to social distance like you are here in places of worship.
But America's division's not easily healed. In Holly Springs, Mississippi, a Pentecostal church burned to the ground this week. The church had sued the city to lift restrictions on services. Graffiti in the parking lot reads, "Bet you stay home now, you hypocrites." For Americans, this is Memorial Day long weekend, the unofficial start of summer.
I'm so happy. I love it. I'm so happy I'm out of the house.
Bars and beaches buzzing as the United States negotiates reopening and its official death toll marches towards 100,000. Prula One, SBS World News.
And gun sales have risen in the US during the pandemic. What's sparked the surge in sales? We'll explain later in the program. Pressure continues to mount on Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro after his country became the second biggest hotspot for COVID-19 cases globally. Brazil's health ministry has confirmed over 330,000 people have been infected with the virus, with Brazil overtaking Russia.
Endless new graves at the Formosa Cemetery, the largest in Brazil's biggest city, Sao Paulo. And every day, more holes in the ground and more coffins lowered in.
There is no way not to be afraid because virus numbers are very large.
And World Health authorities increasingly concerned by what they're seeing in Latin America's most populous nation.
South America has become a new epicenter for the disease. We've seen many South American countries with increasing numbers of cases, but certainly the most affected is Brazil at this point.
Most alarming is the trajectory the virus is taking in Brazil. When other countries are flattening curves, Brazil's is steepening and deaths have doubled in 12 days. All the while, its president, Jair Bolsonaro, continues to underplay the danger of the virus and also maintain his support for the unproven remedy hydroxychloroquine, which Mr. Bolsonaro's US counterpart, Donald Trump, has revealed he's taking. The WHO reiterated today that clinical evidence doesn't support the drug's widespread use. And now a new study in the peer-reviewed Lancet Medical Journal has cast further doubt over its prescription. It found people hospitalised with COVID-19 and treated with hydroxychloroquine had a higher risk of death.
There is, in fact, a signal of potential harm with the use of these drug regimens.
Jair Bolsonaro's handling of the pandemic crisis just one factor leaning hard on his poll ratings. An ongoing criminal inquiry is also weighing him down. Mr. Bolsonaro is being investigated over allegations he sought to interfere in a corruption probe into his son. Brazil's Supreme Court ordering the release of this expletive-laden cabinet meeting recording in which the president threatens to sack his ministers to protect his family.
I won't wait for my family or friends to get screwed because I can't change someone from security. If one cannot change the law enforcement official, one changes the boss. If not his boss, then the minister.
Adding political crisis to Brazil's burgeoning health crisis. Darren Mara, SBS World News.
People in Indonesia are ignoring advice to pray at home ahead of the Islamic Eid festival. Thousands are expected to bypass travel restrictions for the most important holiday in the Muslim calendar, while market traders are disobeying police orders to remain open. It comes in a week in which the country has seen its sharpest spike yet in COVID-19 cases.
Tanah Abang in the centre of Jakarta is Southeast Asia's biggest textile market.
The lead up to the Muslim holiday of Eid is usually the busiest time for traders as customers come to buy new clothes before the celebration. This year is different. Police have come to shut the market down to enforce virus restrictions.
They keep opening their shops, and so the buyers keep coming. It's not right. We will continue to enforce the social restrictions, and we will take actions. It's really tiring.
It's now a daily ritual. There are thousands of traders here, and forcing all of them to follow regulations aimed at curbing the spread of the virus is proving difficult.
If they keep breaking the law, we'll have to revoke their business permit. Up until now, we've been trying to persuade them.
The lead up to Eid is a test for Indonesian authorities. The restrictions mean that many businesses have been forced to shut their doors at what would normally be their busiest time of year, and some attempted to break the rules despite the risk.
Many here are daily wage earners, and some say they haven't received any aid from the government.
If we follow what the government is telling us to work from home, what will we eat? The virus might not kill me then, but we can still die from hunger.
Crowds at Jakarta's main airport this week prompted criticism that the Indonesian government relaxed restrictions far too soon. Only business travellers are permitted to fly, and only those who can afford the increased airfares can make the journey. Some feel low-income earners are being disproportionately targeted.
I want justice. If you want to close my store, then close everything. Don't just keep allowing wealthy people to continue and force people like me to close. They chase us like we're selling stolen goods.
Just hours after the police raid, this is what the central market looked like. Sellers putting out their clothing racks again and returning to business as usual.
I feel sorry for the small sellers. They depend on their sales, and what they earn they give to their families. It's hard, and some are now bankrupt.
They know it's not allowed and unsafe, but they say they have no choice but to stay open and earn a living.
Across the globe, authorities have been tackling the pandemic with varying degrees of success in terms of cases and deaths. SBS News breaks down the information for you country by country. Head to sbsnews.com.au and you'll find all the details right there. Well, a man has faced court charged with multiple offences, including negligent driving, after his car crashed into a crowded shop in Western Sydney. Video from the scene appeared to show vehicles revving up at traffic lights before a car crosses an intersection and hits the Hijab House clothing store. 14 people were injured in the crash. The 51-year-old driver was denied bail when he appeared in court today.
Whilst the circumstances of the offence are unfortunate, my client denies any intention. And as I said earlier, there will be a further release application to be made.
Was there a medical episode or not?
Based on our instruction, yes, there was a medical episode.
Bail was opposed on the grounds the accused failed to explain his behaviour, and there were concerns there could be a repeat incident if he was released. He will next face court in June. Police are investigating the death of a 19-year-old man who fell from a balcony on the Gold Coast. His body was found at the foot of an apartment building early this morning. It's believed he was partying with friends when he fell from the 4th floor balcony. Police have also found 4 teenage males in a semi-conscious state after taking prescription drugs. They were treated by paramedics at the scene and taken to hospital in a stable condition. A drug to stop one of the most aggressive forms of breast cancer from returning is one of 16 projects to receive a funding boost from the National Breast Cancer Foundation. The organisation has an ambitious goal to prevent all breast cancer deaths in Australia in the next 10 years.
Lorna Smeal is walking into her 2nd year of good health. She's recovering from 2 cases of a particularly aggressive form of breast cancer.
What you're aiming for is 5 years clear. That's what the end goal is. If you can get to your 5-year mark, it normally means that you'll be okay.
4 years ago, Lorna was diagnosed with a grade 3 triple-negative breast cancer, just 3 months after giving birth to her daughter. The treatment was successful but gruelling. Then, 3 years later, another triple-negative breast cancer appeared.
Even though it was small and it was nowhere near as dangerous as the first one, the fact that I developed a new cancer, it made me decide that I had to have the double mastectomy.
The Garvan Institute wants to prevent similar stories by developing a new treatment.
We're trying to develop a drug that can be taken after you've been treated for triple-negative breast cancer to stop it coming back in the long term.
It's one of 16 projects sharing in $10 million, the latest batch of funding from the National Breast Cancer Foundation. Its goal to see no more deaths from the disease by 2030.
Over the last 25 years, we've seen improvements in 5-year survival from 74% up to 91%, which is fantastic. The slight fly in the ointment is that, unfortunately, the number of cases per year continues to rise.
The number of cases has increased 38% in the past 10 years. Breast cancer still kills 8 Australians a day. That's more than 3,000 people a year. The Garvan Institute says it's having early success on its project in the lab, but it will still be some time before a potential drug would progress to human trials. Rachel Carey, SBS World News.
Medical flights have resumed for children from some of Australia's most vulnerable communities thanks to emergency funding. A not-for-profit service was forced to ground most of its planes when COVID-19 bans cut its income. But with new support, the service is once again airborne.
It's a big day for 6-year-old Amila De Ambrosio, flying to hospital in Sydney for crucial tests.
We need to go to the doctors because of my legs. They aren't strong enough.
Doctors in her hometown of Griffith in New South Wales are baffled.
We actually don't have a diagnosis yet, so it has been a long process, about 4.5 years of trying to find out why her body just doesn't work the way it should be.
Amila flew for free with Little Wings, a not-for-profit service that's already helped more than 600 families get the best medical care in city hospitals.
Little Wings is an amazing organisation that does sensational things for people in a huge amount of need.
We have children that have to sit for 6 hours linked up for kidney treatments, and they're just not available in their hometowns.
There's decrease of GPs and it's difficult for people to access the necessary specialty.
Stand up, sweetheart.
During the pandemic, funding from clubs and events was cut, leaving Little Wings in limbo.
Once the funds ceased, we had to make some really drastic decisions. We do have 3 aircraft. We were doing between 15 and 17 flights per week. As a result of Corona, we're doing 5 or less a week.
For months, only the most urgent flights continued, paid for from savings. Claire Pearson previously ran a safe house for victims of child sex trafficking in Cambodia. She has also taken a pay cut.
So that's seen me drop down to 3 days per week and volunteering too.
A major bank has offered a grant and the federal government recently put up emergency funding.
They've given us $240,000, which will see a monthly deposit over 6 months, which really will see our survival over that period of time.
So as COVID-19 bans on elective surgery lift, the Little Wings fleet is airborne again.
Into your seat carefully, darling.
Without that, it could have been quite dire for many of the families that are living regionally.
Amila's illness remains a mystery, but she's one step closer to finding a cure. Jennifer Scherer, SBS World News.
A reminder, Small Business Secrets episodes return tomorrow on SBS at 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And if you'd like more on Australian small businesses, you can visit online anytime. Just click on the Small Business Secrets tab on the SBS News website or at SBS On Demand. Australian conservationists have begun a program to monitor the survival of bushfire-impacted koalas in their native habitat. SBS World News has been given an exclusive look at the technology used to help conserve such populations and followed the release of one such koala impacted by the Gospers mountain blaze late last year.
Back in the bush where she belongs. 2-year-old Kelly the koala was rescued by firefighters from what was called the mega bushfire in the Blue Mountains last December. Christine and George Hennessy evacuated before the blaze reached their property. Their home was destroyed, but they discovered one lucky survivor.
Clinging to a tree fern stump that remained after the fire, which had been growing next to the house, was a koala.
She suffered no burns from the fire.
She was very stressed, as you could imagine, but yeah, no physical injuries. So we had to closely observe her, but thankfully that didn't happen, and she came out really unscathed, which is quite remarkable.
Her release will form part of a new koala rehabilitation study led by conservationists and funded by the New South Wales government.
We fitted her with a radio tracking collar, and we'll be monitoring her and other koalas like her to make sure that she's okay. If she needs to come back into care, we'll be able to catch her, but hopefully she'll tell us a lot about how koalas use the landscape after fire. So you can hear that bipping.
The large-scale survey will track the movements of 40 koalas in the Greater Western Sydney region over the next year and a half.
Koalas are some of our most loved and iconic animals, so that's why we need to do everything that we can.
Wildlife carers will return here every couple of days to check on the koala, and if she's coping well, they'll remove the temporary fencing. After that, the animal will be free to roam and choose her own food trees. A return to nature giving bushfire victims hope for the future.
Oh, it's the highlight of our year, highlight of our lives, really.
Very nice.
It's just a beautiful ending.
Conservation and wildlife groups have repeatedly called for koalas to be declared an endangered species. The New South Wales government says it will consider the scientific advice. Cassandra Bain, SBS World News.
The Democrats' Joe Biden has apologised after saying an African-American radio host, quote, ain't black, because he's considering voting for US President Donald Trump. The 77-year-old quick to ensure black voters he doesn't take them for granted.
Tonight, Joe Biden is doing damage control after he sparked outrage with this message for black voters.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man.
The reaction swift and furious. This from the Senate's only black Republican.
That is the most arrogant, condescending comment I've heard in a very long time. 1.3 million African Americans voted for Trump. He's saying to 1.3 million African Americans that you're not black?
The Trump campaign piled on, saying Biden truly believes that he, a 77-year-old white man, should dictate how black people should behave. Biden today doing cleanup.
The bottom line of all this is perhaps I was much too cavalier. I know that the comments have come off like I was taking the African-American vote for granted, but nothing could be further from the truth. And I shouldn't have been such a wise guy.
His campaign notes Trump has a long history of racially charged comments. Sources say Trump has used expletives to describe African nations. He told 4 congresswomen of color to go back to the countries they came from. And he perpetuated the false theory that Barack Obama was not born in America. Now, the vice president was also asked about his search for a running mate. Biden's team has begun reaching out to potential candidates, but they haven't been doing any official vetting just yet. Biden has promised, of course, to pick a woman. And when pressed, he said there are multiple black women who are being considered. But Biden says he doesn't expect to have any decision until July.
Gun shops in the US have seen a surge of customers during the coronavirus pandemic, with data collected by the FBI showing sales in March were the highest since records began. The stores have been declared essential businesses and are staying open, leading to sales in some states increasing almost threefold.
He keeps it hidden away in a dark corner of his closet. As the coronavirus gripped America, John Daggett, a systems analyst and not the nervy type, just felt a 12-gauge shotgun would give him and his girlfriend a little extra peace of mind.
I bought this about a little over a month and a half ago. Didn't know how quickly things would devolve. I mean, people were fighting over toilet paper and things like that.
John already had one handgun, but after looking online, spent $450 buying his new shotgun for self-defense, just in case.
You just never know. I mean, the word pandemic, I think, just kind of makes people scared.
He wasn't alone. In a country where the right to bear arms is ingrained in the psyche, thousands of Americans took one look at COVID-19 and did exactly the same.
It may be hard to believe, but the coronavirus has made Americans want to arm themselves even more than usual. Fear of the unknown and an uncertainty about what could happen has led to sales in stores like this to skyrocket during March and would have been even higher in April had there not been a run on guns and ammunition the month before.
Philip Van Cleve is chairman of the Virginia Citizens Defence League. He says with police distracted by the virus or sick, not defending yourself isn't an option.
Why on earth would COVID make anyone think, right, OK, I've got to go out and buy a gun?
There could be potential food shortages.
Well, still why?
Because people have rioted over food shortages. People have been, violent things can happen. You take away people's food and the thin veneer of society can disappear. I don't care what country you're in. You have a right to protect yourself under American law. A handgun is probably the best way to be able to do that.
As the coronavirus took hold, the number of mandatory background checks for new buyers was up 75% in March, just in Virginia, compared to the year before, the highest monthly volume since records began 3 decades ago. 45 minutes up the rail track and the little town of Beaver Dam, where even this tiny gun store has seen its sales increase 5-fold thanks to COVID-19.
Self-defense types of handguns, things that can be carried concealed, and home defense shotguns have been the biggest sellers. Gadsden guns.
Gun shops have been deemed essential during the pandemic, and owner Pat Webb says locals here have felt the need to be locked and loaded.
They might need a ventilator, they might need to be closer to a hospital. Why would they need a gun?
For one thing, a lot of the jurisdictions are releasing criminals so that they're not in jail passing the virus around.
Back in Virginia, John says he's aware his shotgun is probably overkill.
Maybe a little ridiculous, this model.
But says he just feels safer knowing it's there.
People's reactions to the pandemic. I thought that people might overreact and bad things might happen.
Bad things might happen. A paranoia that's driven sales of guns and gun crime in this country for decades. Even now, when the new enemy to be feared is an invisible virus.
Another 33 Chinese companies will be added to America's economic blacklist, allegedly for helping Beijing spy on its minority Uyghur population or for ties to China's military. The companies focus on artificial intelligence and facial recognition sectors American firms are investing heavily in. The US Commerce Department says they were listed for being complicit in human rights violations. Global car hire giant Hertz will continue operating in Australia and New Zealand despite filing bankruptcy protection in the US. Crippling travel restrictions in the United States and Canada have seen the 102-year-old company's debts swell to $29 billion. Its Florida-based operators have been unable to reach an agreement with lenders for repayment extensions. But its Australian bosses say the issues abroad have had no material impact on local operations. Briefly to finance now, and US stock indexes finished mostly higher as Wall Street shook off an early slide, closing out a solid week of gains for the market. Coming up, what caused the mysterious streak of light to blaze across the southern skies? And a new record, just how much did the world's highest paid female athlete earn last year?
Tonight at 7:30, 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown. Then, winner of 10 Academy Awards, this musical places the beloved tale of Romeo and Juliet into the backdrop of cigar-chomping gangland New York in West Side Story.
Good morning, ladies. Cheers. And I hope this works, because I'm real hungry.
A cinematic journey of isolation, survival and healing. The Beach, Friday, 7:30 on SBS, NITV and On Demand.
He lied to get into the army. That's quite a shock.
indefinite imprisonment.
Bert Newton in the new season of Who Do You Think You Are? Tuesday 7:30 on SBS and on demand.
Now's a great time to sort your health cover with NIB. Join any combined hospital and extras cover online by June 30 and you'll get a virtual Visa e-gift card valued up to $400. Join NIB today. It's worth it.
In the universe, stars are born every day. Just like in Compton, Western Victoria, where for over 93 years we've created not just butter, but a star. Western Star. More than butter.
He knows he's the most important person in the family, but he doesn't know what strong urinary flow means. Cats don't always know what's good for them. Lucky you do. Optimum Urinary Care Formula.
At ANZ, we're here to help you get on top of your money. So if you need a hand banking from home, support through the ups and downs of business, or to ease the pressures of your home loan, we're here and ready to help.
Did someone say KFC?
You don't give in, you don't give up. It's called Aussie Spirit, and it takes spirit to get through times like these. It's what inspires us to help. Together we'll get through this. Search Toyota, here to help.
Hello, my name is Josh Kirsch. So last week we began the festival of Pesach, but we kick it off with a Seder. The whole family come and sit together and really reflect on what it means for us to be Jews who are now free. We made the decision to do something with Zoom. My cousin suggested we include video of my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2012. He was a Holocaust survivor, and these were like old digital camera recordings just of him sitting and like really leading and being a part of the Seder. To have him participating there, reading from that Haggadah I could see on video, it was just so special and so moving. I think to know that he had a family that was keeping those traditions alive after what he went through, I suspect that was probably really meaningful for him.
Hobart's famous Dark Mofo Festival was one of the first to cancel this year because of COVID-19. And now restaurants and cafes are facing a long, quiet winter without the revenue boost of the high-profile festival.
Cooler weather in Hobart usually means the start of the Dark Mofo Festival, but restaurants and cafes are now out in the cold without the winter tourists.
Dark Mofo is the only time of the year that we make enough money to cover the rest.
Without winter trade, restaurant and cafe owners are wondering how they'll get through.
We just try to do as much as we can. We do try to make new menu, and we just do a lot of marketing. We'll see how we go with that, and just I think we should be all right because of the JobKeeper will still help on that. So we should be able to survive this year without Dark Mofo.
Tasmanian Senator Jackie Lambie supports the Premier Peter Gutwin's decision to keep the borders closed for now, but would like to see the state reopen as soon as possible.
Economically, it would be great to be able to open the borders, or at the very least, as soon as we can, go more than 30 kilometres from our house. At the moment, we're quite still restricted.
The Hobart City Council has also taken a financial hit because of the pandemic and will decide on Monday whether or not to cancel the Taste of Tasmania festival that happens over New Year's.
We're projecting to have $10 million loss by the end of this financial year and $20 million next financial year. So we will do as best we can, but we're also struggling to actually, because a lot of our ratepayers are struggling, we're struggling as well because we are a city business.
The Taste of Tasmania festival attracts about 500,000 people over its one-week period. Its cancellation will be another blow to Tasmania's festival status. Sarah Maunda, SBS World News.
Western Australia is about to be hit by a once-in-a-decade storm over the weekend. A severe weather warning is in place for much of the state's west coast from Karratha to Albany. The remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Manga could bring destructive winds, heavy rainfall and high tides tomorrow and on Monday. Travellers have been warned to expect dangerous road conditions and flash flooding. Debris from a Russian rocket is thought to have caused a stunning light show in southeast Australia last night. Victorians reported seeing a meteor-like streak in the sky. Astronomers believe it may have been a Soyuz rocket re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and breaking up on approach. To sport now, and the National Rugby League season will recommence as planned next Thursday night with just one referee. It comes after the Referees Association resolved its dispute with the governing body last night. The one referee system will be reviewed at the end of the season as part of the new agreement.
They didn't want to be the focus of attention across the course of this weekend with industrial action. They certainly didn't want to be the focus of attention leading up to the resumption of the game next Thursday. They just want to get on with their job, and they're very happy for the situation to proceed as planned with one referee.
Part-time referees who aren't required will receive $500 a week as part of the deal. The English Premier League remains confident its season will restart next month. League officials believe it's safe to return despite 6 players and coaches testing positive for coronavirus this week.
It may be hard to believe, but this was the last time the Premier League was in action. 2.5 months after Leicester City's win over Aston Villa, players have had to wait until this week to start an initial phase of non-contact training. And today, in his first interview since the start of this crisis, the man in charge told me about his hopes for a resumption of the season next month.
I sense there is some momentum, some positivity behind it. We've obviously gone back to training, but it is only a first step. It is step by step. All of the clubs work in the communities, the 100,000 jobs that the Premier League supports, all of those are potentially at risk, as with other industry sectors. And I believe ultimately we have a responsibility to try and get back to business to protect jobs and to move forward.
But with unresolved rows among clubs over player safety, the use of neutral stadia and whether relegation should be scrapped, plenty of hurdles remain.
Obviously you have to have contingency plans. Curtailment is still a possibility, and so what would happen in that environment is something we are yet to discuss with our clubs.
Contact training could start next week, but with 6 cases of the virus among Premier League clubs revealed, some players have refused to train over their concerns. And today the Premier League held a meeting with the Footballers' Union to discuss the increased risk to black, Asian and minority ethnic players.
I mean, we wouldn't have taken the first step to go back to training if we weren't convinced that we had created a very safe environment for our players to go back to. And each of our clubs voted unanimously for it last week, shouldn't I? I just think that we have to plan accordingly. We have to take it step by step. The Premier League won't be back to being itself, the Premier League at its best, until we get fans back through the turnstiles.
With an unprecedented financial crisis facing cash-strapped clubs in the Football League, could the top flight do more to bail out the rest of the football family?
Our clubs are suffering significant financial losses. Our support for the rest of the game is unprecedented across European football, and we're very committed to that.
Like all sporting competitions, the Premier League is waiting to re-emerge from its enforced shutdown. When and whether the action will resume remains unclear.
And Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka has become the world's highest-paid women's athlete. The 22-year-old secured a record $57 million in earnings last year, and she replaces Serena Williams on top of the rich list. Coming up, the weather, and environmentalists celebrate the hatching of 20 rare Australian turtles on World Turtle Day.
Next, 8 out of 10 cats does count down.
The heroes
I remember looking at the horses
we take for granted.
and saying sorry.
Vets.
Grief and loss. We have to be a pillar for people.
You're just in it for the money. You don't care about animals.
Then on Dateline, China's other big health issue, obesity. From traditional remedies to brutal boot camps, are they winning the battle of the bulge? Insight followed by Dateline, Tuesday from 8:30 on SBS and on demand. The world has changed. Working from home comes with distractions. Find your safe place. Find your chill. Listen to SBS Chill, your work from home radio station. Go to channel 39 on your TV or sbs.com.au/chill.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you, and we're here for good.
Grant retired recently and built his dream home. Because his house is less than 5 years old, he could pay less on his home and contents insurance. Yui, it's home and contents insurance for individuals like Grant. Yui, you insured.
If you've been injured at work, on the road or in a public place, your normal life can suddenly stop. Check if you have a claim for compensation online in minutes so you can start again. With Slater and Gordon, tomorrow starts today.
Unlike most modems, Telstra's smart modem is cleverly backed up by Australia's best 4G network. So if the connection to your house stops, your home Wi-Fi won't, giving you Australia's most reliable home Wi-Fi. To experience better Wi-Fi, visit telstra.com today.
Harvey Norman, your destination for the Samsung Galaxy range. Save $150 on the Samsung Galaxy S20 128 gigs, now $1,199. The Galaxy S20 is also available in 5G. Save $150. Or get the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus 128 gigs for $1,349. Save $150. Plus save $50 on this Samsung Galaxy Watch, now $498. Limited time, now at Harvey Norman.
Go! Bill Clinton was somebody we could work with.
Clinton was our answer to Reagan.
I ask you to join with us in a reunited States.
I think I have a real story for you now.
I was completely at his mercy. We were both cautious, but not cautious enough.
Mr. President, your testimony is subject to penalty of perjury.
I was scared, and I felt really responsible.
The Clinton Affair starts tomorrow 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
James Franco stars in an incredible true story of survival in 127 hours. Bring cinema home with Weekend Movies. Tonight, 8:30 on SBS World Movies.
To the weather now for Sunday, and an intense low is generating strong winds, large waves and showers in parts of eastern Victoria and New South Wales. An associated trough is producing cloud and rain across much of Queensland, leading to chilly days. Southerly winds are bringing showers to parts of South Australia. In the major centres, possible showers for Sydney tomorrow, also in Melbourne, Adelaide and Hobart. Partly cloudy in Brisbane and Canberra, with heavy rain for Perth but sunny in Darwin. Showers for Auckland and Christchurch, a partly cloudy day in Noumea and a fine day for Nadi. In Southeast Asia, thunderstorms for Bangkok and Singapore, cloudy in Denpasar and a few showers for Honiara. A fine day forecast for Beijing, showers for Hong Kong, Manila and Seoul, drizzle in Taipei with cloudy conditions in Tokyo. A partly cloudy day for Tehran, Baghdad and Mumbai, and a few showers expected for Jerusalem, but it's all clear in Delhi and Islamabad. A foggy day for Rome, fine conditions for Athens and Paris, showers forecast Sunday in Berlin and Moscow, partly cloudy in Madrid and thunderstorms for Warsaw. A few showers around in Addis Ababa and Nairobi, a fine day for Cairo and Casablanca, partly cloudy in Dakar and Lima and thunderstorms for Lagos. Clear skies for Asuncion, La Paz and Santiago, showers for Bogota, thunder in Panama City and drizzle in Rio de Janeiro. And finally up north, cloudy in New York and Washington, showers for Mexico City, Vancouver and Havana, thunderstorms in Chicago and Dallas. Environmentalists are celebrating the hatching of 20 rare Australian turtles native to a small region in New South Wales. On World Turtle Day, aquariums and parks have stressed the importance of protecting the species.
A special delivery at this Sydney aquarium. Brothers Dave and Chong celebrate World Turtle Day with a treat.
Loggerhead turtles, they're almost exclusively carnivores, so they like to eat lots of things like squid and fish, mussels and crabs. You'll see in the cake that we've made.
These graceful sea creatures have been around for more than 200 million years. Globally, many turtles are classed as vulnerable, endangered or critically endangered. One of the most common threats, pollution. This is a Manning River turtle. They live in only one place on Earth, a catchment in New South Wales' northern tablelands.
It faces many different threats: habitat loss, land degradation, and threats from introduced species.
Recent bushfires and drought have made the endangered species more vulnerable than ever. The Australian Reptile Park teaming up with the not-for-profit Aussie Ark, creating the first conservation breeding program for the Manning River turtle.
We have already successfully hatched 20.
Around the world, the coronavirus pandemic has actually helped some species. In Thailand, a record number of rare leatherback sea turtles hatched on beaches bereft of tourists. More than 10 nests have been found in Phuket, the highest number in 20 years.
When the eggs are in the sand, there's a high mortality rate, run over by vehicles, quad bikes, trodden on and trampled. So realistically, that cycle is probably easier that they've been doing for all of history before humans.
Turtles play an essential role in the ecosystem. They help keep waterways clean. Environmentalists say the least we could do is return the favour.
Pick up whatever plastic you can find, but also don't leave plastic behind.
To help ensure turtles stick around for another 200 million years. Charlotte Lamb, SBS World News.
A neighbourhood of San Francisco has been serenaded by two coyotes. Yes, sir, a resident caught the pair on video howling from a hilltop overlooking the city. Local media reports there has been a spike in coyote sightings in the city since its people were ordered to stay at home due to the coronavirus pandemic. Recapping our top stories now, at least 97 people have been killed when a passenger plane crashed into a residential neighbourhood in Pakistan. 2 men survived the crash, while a baby was rescued from the rubble of collapsed homes. International condemnation is growing against China's plans to crack down on the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. Pro-democracy demonstrators have vowed to continue protesting despite a new national security law described as a death knell for the city's freedoms. Pressure is mounting on the federal government to amend the JobKeeper scheme after the program's spent was underestimated by $60 billion. Debate rages over how the saved money should be spent, with welfare groups and unions arguing those who missed out should now be given more support. And state governments are being lobbied to further ease coronavirus restrictions, with small businesses, including beauty therapists, desperate to show they are safe to reopen after having no clients for 2 months. And it comes as Australia's coronavirus death toll rose to 102 after the death of a Victorian man in his 60s. Victoria once again recorded the most new virus cases today. That's the world this Saturday. If you missed some of tonight's bulletin, you can catch up on the SBS News website shortly. And a reminder, you can also watch the bulletin live there or on our app. And I'll be back with news updates throughout the evening. On behalf of the entire SBS World News team, enjoy your evening. Good night.